Dia hoot, my wild Irish tubers. Hello again and welcome to another episode of Recovery Crafting. As we know, St. Patrick's Day is coming up this week. And for those of you who watched last week's video, you'll know a little bit about the backstory as to why I'm doing this craft. That it is a memorial craft for my grandmother who passed away 2 years ago on St. Patrick's Day. I'm a little bit frazzled this morning because I had to wake up super early in order to win this weekend's round of laundry roulette, which I am an unwilling participant of, but it's a game that I must play in this building that I live in. First of all, real quick, before I get to the intro, I want to give a shout out to a fellow recovery crafter that I met at my last quarter auction that I did. And this was a shirt that I won from her. I think this was the raffle prize, yeah, because I got tie-dyed pillowcases. So that's what I won from the actual from the quarter auction itself. But this was a raffle item along with a cool lamp. She is also a woman in recovery. So my friend Jessica, if you are watching, just wanted to give you a quick shout out and send all the love. I've been telling everybody about what you do, and I hope to see you soon at another auction. So I'm going to jump through to the musical intro, and then I'll give you a little bit of a history about St. Patrick's Day and how it can be kind of difficult for people who are in alcoholism or who are in recovery for alcoholism. But there's a whole, don't think about that right now. I'll get into it in a second. Anyway, hang around, just stay there. Just stay there. Like I said, frazzled. I'll be right back. All right. So, I'm going to try to calm down and use my words properly. So, St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick, even though he was never actually canonized as a saint by the church, and his name wasn't even really Patrick, and he was born in Roman England, Britain at the time. So, anyway, there were never any snakes in Ireland, for those of you who know that, or who have heard that tale that he was known for eradicating the snakes in Ireland. There never were any. It's an island. Ireland didn't have any snakes. So actually he was known for bringing Christianity to Ireland. He was actually captured by Irish pirates, and I think he was enslaved for 6 or 7 years before he tried to escape, and then was captured by the French. And his father was a Christian, and he ended up having a dream that he needed to bring Christianity back to Ireland and teach the pagans the ways of Christianity. And he actually used the symbol of the shamrock to teach them about the Holy Trinity. And 3 was there was a trinity of gods and goddesses that were the Celts' main gods and goddesses. So they were used to the whole, as pagans and druids, they were used to the whole trinity. So he was able to use the shamrock as a symbol to help them learn about Christianity. I know, as somebody who is not only very proud of my Irish heritage, but as somebody who is also in recovery for alcoholism, St. Patrick's Day can be a really hard day, because it's the day where everybody likes to go out, and they tell you everybody's Irish on St. Patrick's Day. Well, that's true, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. But there's a whole lot more to Irish culture than just going out and drinking green beer. Yeah, and whiskey, although it's good. Anyway, there's a whole lot more to it, and St. Patrick's Day was actually a festival that was celebrated every year on the anniversary of St. Patrick's death. And it became a family feast day. So if I find it's easier on St. Patrick's Day to not think about all of the festivities that I'm missing out on, and remember what the true heart of the holiday is, and spend time with family and reaching out to family and feasting. And yes, I do the typical boiled dinner. I do love myself some corned beef and cabbage, which again is not actually something that was invented over in Ireland. That was not a meal. A boiled dinner would be a very common thing, but as we know it, the corned beef cabbage boiled dinner with potatoes and carrots and stuff, that was not, it's not a traditionally Irish dish. I do believe that was actually, that whole concept was created over here in America. But I still eat it, and I still love me some Irish soda bread, which Irish soda bread is another thing that reminds me of my grandmother, which is what today's craft is going to be about. Again, for those of you who watched last week's video, I wanted to get that kind of heavy stuff out of the way then, so that I could really enjoy focusing on the craft. I am going to get everything set up. This is totally a craft where you can put on Netflix or your favorite YouTube channel or Hulu or whatever show you happen to be binge watching at the time. And this is a great rainy, snowy day, meditative craft. It's very repetitive. Once you get the setup done, you just sit there and you can just keep going and you can watch whatever you want to watch. And it's a very good, it's a very good meditative craft. And it's very simple, and you don't need a lot of supplies, and I think it's a great beginning craft. I need to stop saying the word "and," by the way. I've noticed that in a lot of my videos. I apologize for that, and I'm going to work. That's my goal for now, is to stop saying the word "and" in between every sentence. This thing is killing my head. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling, go and get everything set up, and then I'm going to show you how to make some fabric wreaths. Hi everyone. Okay, I'm trying really hard to find ways to get good views of what I'm doing. This one I'm not looking to do in the kitchen because these take some time, and I like to be able to sit down and, like I said, throw on the TV. So I'm actually in the living room, and I just set up this little workspace. So to go over the supplies for what we're going to need today. First of all, we need a styrofoam wreath. Now you can actually do these. My family does them in trees as well, like using the styrofoam tree shape, the cones. But I mean, any sort of wreath, you can do a wreath in any shape. I just got this one just because I'm showing you the simple basics of how to do the project. Now you can get these in white. What I don't suggest, this is actually the dense styrofoam. What I don't suggest you do is, there's some styrofoam that it's rather loose and more porous, and it actually breaks off in chunks as you start to put the fabric inside of it. So I don't suggest using those. You definitely want one of the denser foam bases. So again, any shape that you want, you can start off with that. We will need some fabric glue. This is just a small container of it to start me off with. I do have a couple of these. Fabric. Now, I know, okay, so it's a St. Patrick's Day thing, but it's more of a St. Patrick's Day thing because it's a memory of my family, my grandmother. So I didn't have enough green fabric to do one as a St. Patrick's Day wreath, so I'm just going with what I have. And it's more the concept of what I'm doing. But you're going to need, you want some coordinating fabrics. Now, if you decide that you want to do these for a specific holiday, you'll want to go with fabrics that represent the colors of that holiday. I am actually just going to make a wreath in some fabrics that I really like. So red and black are a couple of that's one of my favorite color combinations. So we'll get to this in a minute. You also are going to need some scissors. Now I'm just using regular scissors, regular good crafting scissors. I do suggest that in order to help stop the fraying on these is if you have a set of pinking shears, you might want to use those instead so that you can avoid a lot of the fraying that will happen. And then I have a plate to put my glue on. And You can use any sort of, I'm actually going to be using one of these small flathead or Phillips head screwdrivers that's in here to insert the fabric into the wreath. You can use dowels or skewers. Trying to think, there's any fine-tipped pointed object that won't break through the fabric, because that's what you don't want it to do. You actually want it to have a secure hold to push the fabric into the wreath. So like I said, I'm going to use one of these small screwdrivers here, and that's pretty much it. Now, obviously my fabric starts off as these were actually small samples or small square pieces that I got from the art store, and they came in like all sorts of different colors and styles, and I just grabbed a few that I liked. So what you end up doing is we take these and we cut them into about 2-inch wide strips. And then we're going to take these and cut these down into about 2 by 2. And I'm doing this, I'm not measuring anything. You can actually lay out your fabric and do a whole grid so that you make sure that everything is the exact same size. For me, once the project is done, as long as they're similar, you're not going to notice whether or not you measured them. So it's not a big deal to me. So these again are going to go through, and we're just going to make a whole bunch of squares. And I'm going to fast forward while I do some of that, and I'll just give you some quick clips as to what I'm doing, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to assemble the whole project. Okay, so as you can see, I went through with this first color that I had chosen, and I cut all of these. I've got my piles of squares here, and then I'm going to go through and do the same thing with this color. And then what I forgot to mention is you can choose however many colors you want. I usually like to go with, if I'm doing something or something that's so different like this, contrasting, that's the word I'm trying to think of. They're contrasting. If I'm doing something like this, you can always go with just 2 if you want to. I like throwing in the other textures. So this polka dotted one here, or this deeper red shade. So you can, I'll probably end up using all 4 on this project. You can do anywhere from 3 to however many colors you want to. That's entirely up to you. And then once the wreath is entirely filled out, you'll be able to go back in and decorate it with some other accoutrement once you're done. So right now, I'm just going to pause it again, go through and cut these up into squares. I'll probably just start out by showing you with these 2 colors what we're going to do. I won't bother cutting into these right now because I actually might do these as an outer border. So let me get these cut up. We'll come back and I'll start showing you how to assemble. Okay, so I have cut up both of my main colors that I want to use. I'm going to move these out of the way for now. Slide this over to the side. The other thing that I do want to mention, when you buy fabric, you want to make sure that the pattern shows through onto the other side. You will see a little bit of the back on this. So I don't like to choose anything that has, that pure white back, or the where one side is a completely different color than the other. You can actually, if they look nice and it's a color that you want as an accent in your wreath, but I like to have the fabric where you can see the pattern from both sides. So I have my wreath set out here. I'm going to choose my weapon of choice, which is a 3/32. See if I can get that. So 3/32 Phillips head screwdriver. And I'm going to take my fabric glue and I'm just gonna squeeze out a whole bunch of it onto my plate. Now I like to start at the top center I like to do my first row right in the middle of the face of the wreath. So I'm going to pick up one of my squares and I'm going to put the right side facing up, and I'm going to put my screwdriver in the middle. So this is my right side of the fabric. I'm going to put the screwdriver in the middle and kind of flower the fabric up around it. And then I dip the end of the fabric just a little bit into that fabric glue. And then I pick a spot, press it in, and take out the screwdriver. So, right side of the fabric, flower, dip it in my fabric glue, and then I'm going to come, leaving a little bit of space in between, I'm going to come up right next to it and press the next piece of fabric in. Right about the same, you want about the same height. Show you one more. Little bit of glue. Press and remove. So as you can see, that's what we start out with. And this is why I made that comment. If you guys watched last week's video, sorry, there's people skulking around in the hallway. That's why I've been quiet. So, if you watched last week's video, you'll remember how I said, I laugh about it now because this is totally a craft where you could sit down and it would keep me occupied for so long. Grandma could go around the house and do whatever it is that she needed to do around the house. And I would sit at the kitchen table completely enamored and occupied by this for hours. And at the same time, I was making something for her. But I mean, as a crafty kid, this was just amazing to me. And I had free reign. She would do all the cutting for me. All of the squares would already be set up. And she would just set me down with all these different types of fabric and a couple of wreaths and just let me go to town. And she had the big containers of fabric glue. And she taught my aunts how to do this too. And that's why my aunt had suggested this craft to me. She was watching one of my videos and she brought this up, and I remember, you know what's funny? I actually picked this up. I started doing this again. I'm going to say it was just before I got sober. So probably it was Christmas about 4 years ago. And I didn't have a lot of money, obviously. I was very heavy into my drinking days. And I remembered this craft and I was like, oh, this will be perfect. I can do these really inexpensive and I can gift them. Oops. That one just didn't want to stay in there. And I can gift them to people. And I remember I got it was those wide, like I was just telling you about the ones that break apart, the foam trees, and they were tiny, and I was trying to do it and they didn't come out that well. I think I did end up gifting one to my mom. It was, it had puppy feet fabric in it. So as you can see, this is where we're going with this. And so then you're going to completely encapsulate this so that you won't see the wreath beneath it. That's why the color of the base of the wreath doesn't really matter. But I'm going to fast forward a little bit and get this whole top row done, and then I'll come back. All right. So as you can see, I have now finished one whole row going around the top. And I'm going to work on showing you how to start butting in the next layer. And then I'm not going to finish the whole thing on screen, obviously. These do take a long time. But that's, like I said, the fun of it. And it's something that you can also put to the side and finish and come back to. A couple of tips and tricks. When I Actually, I'll show you as I'm doing the next layer. So if you're doing this with 3 colors of fabric, sometimes it works out better because then you have, you know, you can butt in. So you see here I have my red and my black and white. If there were a 3rd color over here, then I could start with this color in between these 2 so that it's a real true alternating. But since I only have 2, and it'll actually make some really cool patterns in the end. So just a little bit of glue. And so you can see where my seam line is. And just like I was leaving about 1/8 of an inch to 3/16 in between each piece of fabric that I was doing next to each other, I want to leave that same amount of space here. And I'm going to go ahead and press in. Now, here's a couple of things. First, it can be really easy, or much easier, if you twist this out instead of trying to pull it straight out. And the other thing is, if you don't feel like these got a good hold, and sometimes they will just pop right out, you can go right back into the middle here, and you don't have to try to hit that center again, but you can actually press this fabric in a couple of different places so that it gets a much better hold. So like I've just pressed this in 3 different spots. You won't see it once it's done. The other thing that'll happen is sometimes whatever you're using as a poking tool will end up just breaking right through the bottom of the fabric, depending on the fabric you're using. And that's another time where, like I said, I'll go back through, and you don't have to try to shove it in the same hole, because now you've already made a hole in the styrofoam, so it might not stick well. So you can go back in and just make little holes next to it and just press that fabric in a couple of different places. And so you're just going to go around using the same alternating pattern that we used on the first row. And again, right side up, put it towards the center, fold it around. Let me try that again. So right in the center, fold and flower. And then you want to hold that fabric so that you've got the point here to dip into le glue, and you don't need a whole lot. And I just come right up in, leaving again a little bit of space in between both the top row and the fabric piece next to it. Now I can feel that this has broken through the bottom of the fabric, so I'm going to twist gently, and then I'm going to, without removing it from the floret, I'm just going to find another spot and press in. And that's how you can tuck them. So as you can see, we've got a whole nother row here starting. So you'll want to do this. You will want to leave the back of it open because you can hang these up. And I'll continue going around this row. I might have enough room for a 3rd row. And then I will want to do a row or 2 on the inside here to fill this in. And then what you can do is you can add some, once you're done, you can add bows to it. You can, any of the wooden decorations, like if there's a word that you find that's laser cut out of some wood or even some metal, you can attach those, whether it be with hot glue or whether you tie them on. If it's for Christmas, you can add in some bulbs. You can mount something in the middle here. Any other way that you would decorate a typical wreath, you have the option with this. But they're great because, you can put them down with your decoration. You can store them with your holiday decorations, or something like this that's just a general color scheme. You can just leave up all year round if you want to. I am going to get cleaned up here now that I've shown you. And then what I'm going to do, when we come back for the my outro, I will talk to you about some pictures that I'm going to insert in there as well. So stick right with me. We'll be right back. Okay, so thank you so much for hanging out with me while I went over this craft. I did want to show it to you this way because I know my vision of it, the camera view of it before, probably wasn't the best one. So this way you can see definitely the pattern of what it's going to turn into. And what I'm going to do now is my aunts were kind enough to send me some photos of wreaths that either they had made or that my grandmother had made and handed off to them. So I'm going to insert that for you here. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed those, and you can definitely see in those photos the different variations, the way that you can change the decorations on them afterwards. Like I said, once you're done with the fabric part of it, the different ways that you can embellish them. And she would do them for all sorts of different holidays. And sometimes she would do them just in celebration of spring, or in summertime colors, or in somebody's favorite color, which in my grandmother's case, her favorite color was purple. So these are still hanging around her house, and it is just a little piece of her, and I'm really glad that my aunt brought this up. Now, I've made it through this whole video without crying, and I'm very proud of myself, because this was just a way for me to channel my grandma and say thank you. And like I said, I paid attention to you, and I remember you. And again, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to make my amends to you before you passed, but I know that you can hear me. And I know that you're there. I'm not a very religious person. Let me put that out there. I am not a typically religious person. I am a very spiritual person, and I am a faithful person. Organized religion is not so much my thing, but that's, again, religion, politics, two different reasons for people. There are two international reasons for people, including families, to argue in things that should never be brought up at the Thanksgiving dinner table if you have Thanksgiving. But at any dinner table, just don't bring them up, because they're unimportant. When you're spending time with family, you should be spending time with family and remembering and discussing the important aspects of life. And those are just reasons for people to argue and bring all sorts of tension. So on this feast day, or coming up for this feast day, for St. Patrick's Day, think about those things, remembering family and the struggles that all of our different cultures have had. No matter what culture you are, there have been struggles. People have been oppressed and shut down, and there have been wars and famines, and there has been enslavement and people who get kicked to the bottom, and somehow we always find a way to survive. And I think that, just like St. Patrick, having been captured and finding his way. Not only did he escape eventually, but he then brought what he learned back to the Irish people, the same people that had originally enslaved him. So this idea of paying it forward, and family and tradition. And this is a family tradition that was passed down from my grandmother to my aunts and then to me. And it was my aunt that reminded me about it. And I'm glad that I could share it with you and hand a little piece of my grandmother out to each one of you. That's a really beautiful thing, to be able to let her legacy live on through a craft, which is a language that I speak rather fluently. And I hope that you've enjoyed this video. And to those of you who can still drink, I'd like to say sláinte. But if you cannot, like myself, remember that there are plenty of other things that make us Irish than alcohol. And I just want to say that I love you all, and I am so happy to have you all with me on this journey, and thank you so much for sticking with me. And I hope you enjoy crafting, and I hope you try this project out. And if you do, please find me on Facebook or send me an email, and I would love to feature your guys' work. Like I said, I still haven't heard from anybody if you would be interested in doing a Facebook group where we could share the different crafts that we work on together. If anybody is interested in that, and if you've been leaving, I share these videos to Facebook. If you have been leaving messages to me on Facebook, awesome, cool, love it, and I really appreciate the feedback. If you guys could leave those comments on the YouTube videos on YouTube, that would just be super fantastic for me. I would just love to have that kind of feedback directly on YouTube. But either way, as long as you're sending me love, that's all I really care about. So, happy St. Patrick's Day, and happy any day that you get to celebrate your heritage, and I love you, and come back again next week, and I don't know what we're gonna do yet, but I'll figure it out, and I love you all. Like, subscribe, share, click all the buttons, do all the things, and I love you so much. Mwah.